How did you get involved? It doesn't seem like you're
What's going on
today? We're here. Today is the return date on the notice of motion for the Bankruptcy Court to approve a sale of the property to the Rudin family, including North Shore Jewish Hospital. 7 parties have filed objections, and I represent one of the objecting parties.
What's your position?
Our position is that the property is not adequately marketed. We need 45-day adjournment of today's hearing to further market the property, and the sale of the property is presently constituted is not in the best use or need of the property because the community needs a hospital, a full-service hospital.
And how did this deal come about? How did your coalition come about, or your group?
My group received notice of the motion concerning the sale of the property. They organized and they retained me approximately 10 days ago to get involved.
And, I mean, how viable is this counter offer?
We have There's no offer from an alternate group on the table presently. We've expressed and heard interest from a number of hospitals and other investors, and we're hopeful with the additional time we will receive a firm offer.
And what are your prospects? What do you think?
Hard to say at this point. It's an uphill battle.
Why are you fighting?
It's the fight, it's the good fight, and it needs to be fought.
Can you expound on that, please?
St. Vincent's has been in existence for over 160 years. I believe it's 166 years. The community needs a full-service hospital, not a healthcare center. These three gentlemen have stepped up. One is a doctor, two are lawyers, to organize the community, to assist the community in achieving this goal. It's a matter of life and death for the village and for the community.
So what do you say to people who say that that comprehensive emergency care center looks pretty darn good?
Better than nothing.
That's a debate for other people.
Do you have anything to say to respond to that?
I don't. That's a matter for my clients and for members of the community to decide. Stuff that there are no objections first, which makes sense.
Yeah, right, of course. Yeah, but it's an interesting avenue to receive what there are a number of very, very, very serious questions, and they don't know the answers to them. They shouldn't be petitioning the court to approve the sale of stuff like that.
Hi, Yara. How are you?
I'm good.
Good to see you.
Oh, hi, Steve.
Oh, we'll see what happens. Mr. Green, how are you? Pleasure. Thank you.
I thought what you laid out this morning was great, so.
Well, hi.
Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Hi. So,
Hey.
This is Jonathan.
Timothy.
Oh, Timothy. Okay.
I take it our lawyer has briefed you with everything you need to know, and Yara, and
Would you like to make a comment, please?
well, we're here fighting for the community. We're going to pursue this until the community his health is safeguarded, and that requires a real emergency room with a real hospital support system.
What prompted this last-minute stand?
It's not a last-minute stand. Many of us, I mean, Ms. Curlin here has been certainly at it for.
You told me 6 months ago you were involved in
That's
this.
right. There you go. There you go. Listen, it's not a last-minute. I've been involved in this. I shouldn't say this, for 53 years, which is how long I've lived in the village, which is how old I am, and I've been involved in receiving health care from St. Vincent's, and I know firsthand the lifeline that St. Vincent's provides for our community, and we cannot afford to lose our lifeline, especially as the population in the area served is exploding between what's happening downtown, between the proposed expansions in the village proper. Not to have a major hospital center on the west side is playing Russian roulette with the lives of residents, visitors, tourists, and people who work and do business down here. I think with that we better go into court. And I'll have more to say after the... Thank you.
Why has that escaped Bloomberg?
You have to ask him that question.
This is the season of resurrection. With the holidays coming up, let's resurrect the hospital. Above all, do no harm. Once we destroy a hospital, it's be really hard to get it back. And St. Vincent's, I've lived there for 35 years. There's a covenant that we have. When we move into an area, we expect the hospital to stay. It's enough the covenant about Social Security is in danger of being lost. We may lose our money that we paid into all this time, and now we could be in danger of losing our life if we lose this hospital.
I think that, going into this, we had an expectation that the judge would be granting approval of the order proposing the sale to the Rudins for the St. Vincent's campus. I disagree with some of the findings of law. I think that there were some interesting points that the judge conceded to, however. For example, the fact that this needed to go before the New York State Supreme Court, and that notice had to be given to the Attorney General's office. And it is our strong position that, in fact, the stakeholders who are impacted by this, because it was a not-for-profit entity, entity do need to be taken into consideration. And I think the argument that we tried to make in court is that while the Rudin folks were suggesting that this freestanding emergency room and the efforts to get such a facility would be a benefit to the community, we were trying to talk about some of the serious health concerns with this type of freestanding emergency facility, the likes of which New York State has never seen, the likes of which may very well be against New York State law, the likes of which are totally unregulated. As they stated, it doesn't have to comport with Article 28 of New York State health laws, so it would be an unregulated facility that offers services that would not treat medical emergencies while presenting that, in fact, they were a standalone emergency room.
But the judge seemed to rule, obviously definitively, that was outside the purview of her report and her ruling, and that it's up to the IRS to defend its ruling, not you, and that a nonprofit is, regardless of its nonprofit status, nonetheless has the right to liquidate its assets in bankruptcy. So she seemed to stand pretty firmly. Yeah, no, she seemed to say, like you said, while she didn't say that they were necessarily complying with 501c3, or maybe she feels that they are. So the IRS had not objected to it. Well, and she said that an individual citizen didn't necessarily have the right to make that complaint or to object to that. That really is what the IRS would need to do. I don't think that that's the case at all. In fact, I do think that this sale, as I indicated when I spoke in court, is obligated to follow the rules and the laws that apply to such a sale, even if it weren't in front of the bankruptcy court, meaning under bankruptcy court codes, they need to follow the laws that apply to such a transfer, regardless of whether it's done in bankruptcy court or not done in bankruptcy court. And as such, what we're talking about is the duty of obedience that the Board of Directors of St. Vincent's has, and the requirements under 501c3 of the IRS code, which say that in order to transfer these assets, you have to also assume the underlying charitable mission. And while the Rudin Development Corporation is offering to put an urgent care center in a couple of floors of one of the 8 buildings on the campus, the majority of this endeavor is to develop it for residential real estate, which is clearly not the underlying charitable mission of the 501c3 that they're transferring. So this is going to be the basis of your joint appeal, and that will be the basis of your appeal? Well, there are many people and many entities objecting today, so we will all reflect on the decision. We'll wait for it actually to come out in publication, and we'll discuss our options in terms of appeals or in terms of moving forward. I think, again, while the court overruled my objection and allowed the sale to go forward, what she also did say both a couple of times was that she would be willing to entertain a claim of violation of state laws, and that she acknowledged that this needed to go before the New York State Supreme Court. So to that degree, she is acknowledging that there needs to be additional contemplations, and that there needs to be a level of scrutiny regarding these, what I believe are core issues. So we may be appealing it. We will look into what the actual written decision is. She obviously read it from the bench, but we'd like to look it over. And obviously Alan Gerson and Dudley Gaffin and other folks are also going to be reviewing it, other objectors like the doctors who appeared today as well. Great. Thanks so much.
Yep, you got it.
Okay. Mike, congrats again.
Mike, this is Fred Mobley. You guys have spoken on.
Can I get a statement, please?
Can you just give me 1 second, please? Hi, how are you?
Good. Fred Mobley, we've spoken to you.
Oh, sure. How are you doing?
Good. So,
with the local community and with all of the other providers in the community over the next number of months and beyond, so that we can accelerate delivery of care and provide the kind of services that the community needs.
what's ahead for approvals with the State Health Department? What applications and what timetable?
Well, we anticipate that submitting our certificate of need, which is the approval format that you use, to the state by the end of April.
Hi. You know what? Why don't you give me your card, and maybe we'll do this another.
it's an important
But I don't. What are you? What is this for? Okay. You know what? It's been a really long day.
It has been.
So do me a favor. And he's got to run. I promise. Give me your card.
You know, possible.
Give me your card.
It's all right.
I know, and that would be fine. It's been a really long day.
Momentous occasion.
Right, but you know it has been a really long day, so if we can do it another time when he's a little bit more prepared, I mean, you know, no, I mean, he's probably tired. He's got to run.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
Let me ask if you can stick around for
Very quick.
They didn't want to talk to me.
But the point is, each group made, I think, some thoughtful objections and laid a groundwork for the other. And the culmination of which, although she denied our objections and she ultimately ruled in favor of the Rudins, which I don't think that we're that surprised about,
No,
right?
that's been planned and those chess moves have been made.
But she said a couple of things, which was that she acknowledged that this has to go before a New York State Supreme Court. And she acknowledged that there needs to be a submission to the New York State Attorney General's office. So those are, that's interesting to me, because she's not just saying, it's, you know, right, those things need to be submitted to the court.
I didn't pick
and the
up
other
on
thing
that.
is, she said that it wasn't our place as individuals to raise the complaint regarding the 501c3 status and specifically the charitable mission and the duty of obedience that I raised when I was speaking, right?
Which I didn't understand.
What that means is that when you transfer the assets, when they're all of the assets or the majority of the assets like that of a 501c3 with a charitable mission like St. Vincent's was
to a public entity,
to any other entity,
he's private. Rudin is private.
But the point is
transfer to anyone.
Right.
With that comes the obligations to transfer the charitable mission, the underlying charitable mission. Which, in this case, even if the urgent care center were to go through, which another point that we made was there's no guarantee of that either. Even if it were, we're talking about a couple of floors of one building, of one of the buildings of a campus of 8 or more buildings, the rest of which would be converted to residential luxury real estate, which certainly is not the underlying charitable mission of the hospital.
501c intention initially.
So, I mean, so that's interesting. She wasn't so much saying that it was, she was more saying it's up to the IRS to determine that. Now, the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, is not going to necessarily know every time an entity, a nonprofit entity, is transferring those assets, and that just because the IRS wasn't on notice or didn't show up here doesn't mean that those laws aren't being broken. So that's something. It's something to think about. We'll read the decision. We'll look at it. But you know, I was encouraged by the community showing up, all these different groups from different positions, making, I thought, very good cases.
Very good arguments.
Yeah, very good arguments.
Absolutely.
You know, so. There are options and there are choices, and even if this sale is approved, the Rudins know they have a lot of heavy lifts to go through the Euler process and the landmark process. And you know, the judge spoke from the bench and said a couple of things that I thought were flatly wrong. She premised as a basis for granting this order the fact that there had been no sponsors who came forward back in April of 2010, when, according to the information that we have, Mount Sinai was ready, willing, and able to take over that hospital.
We're very aware of that.
But was not allowed to do so.
That's right.
Right. So
Well, Richard Gaines would not give them the Medicare increases.
So onward and upward. You know, we spent our Thursday here in the court.
When will the transcript be available?
It should be pretty quickly.
What's that guy's name?
As soon as
We
I
just
get
went
it,
for
I can
transcript
email
on
it
the
to you.
5th floor. Oh, you could.
No, they'll put it on ECF and it'll be available to you. So, yeah.
Okay.
Well, you know, maybe Mr. Rudin's statement was significant because we were talking in the elevator and he heard us. When he came out, he said, after the sale, you'll have time to voice your opinions, which I didn't like, but maybe he meant that maybe they're going to be listening to us.
Well, I think that there are a number of hurdles, and I think the community has a number of options available to it at this point. One is obviously to consider the potential of an appeal of this decision. The other is to appear in some capacity in an appropriate way in the state court proceeding with the Attorney General. And the third is, presuming the Rudins are able to proceed with this purchase, to deal with the ULURP and the landmark processes. Because the other point that the judge made, which I don't necessarily agree with, is something to the effect that the Rudins have been allowed to purchase and develop the east side of the campus. I actually think that the east and west side of the campus were proposed for the hardship exemption together, and the landmark exceptions are not in effect on either side of the campus. So that'll be an interesting battle as we look into that down the road. So we have different choices, we have different options. We just need to keep showing up, and April 30th we'll be rallying. And let's get people out, and let's make sure, you know,
the community is heard.
Do you think that the Rudins might be open to talks and do something more?
I can certainly say we've been open to talking with them.
Maybe that statement had some meaning like that.
I've made suggestions that the mayor is leaving after a third term to give the West Village back, a Trauma One center, put his name on it. Same thing applies to the Rudin family. They're builders of New York. They're a respected family. They could do this. They could give back a 350-bed hospital and develop and do both and satisfy everybody and be heroes and be heroes further, you know, to define their family.
Maybe they could be approached in that light.
In the
we're going to pursue all
From their
angles.
vantage point, how do you think they're feeling today?
That's what my question was.
You know, I think they're happy.
Very elated.
I think it's a major victory for them. The Rudins have been working for a long time, as was made clear today in court, to plan to purchase this property. So I think that they're relieved and happy and feel like they've overcome a big hurdle. But at the same time, I think that they realize that there are still several more hurdles in front of them. And so, you know, hopefully they're willing to sit down and be reasonable. And you know, we are agnostic. The coalition is agnostic in terms of what medical center and what investor acquires these properties. We have only one goal, which is to ensure that a hospital is at the facilities and that we're able to have the level and quality of health care that the community needs and that the community deserves. And you know, we believe there's a win-win there. There's an opportunity to do that, whether that's with the Rudins, whether that's with different investors. Unfortunately, folks came forward today to ask the court to consider an additional investor, and
that stunk.
I was really struck by the court's claim that, in fact, they weren't necessarily just thinking about the greatest amount of money and the highest dollar, that they didn't necessarily take the highest bidder into account. But, you know, I think
there was no highest bidder into account. There's been no transparency through C.B. Richard Ellis in reference to the bidding process. And there's probably about 850,000 square feet of property. If you divide that by $260 million, the square footage amount is really low. Understanding that you still have to do construction, and there's a lot of processes to go through for zoning. It's really not a significantly high amount to be paying for that type of property in the West Village meatpacking community, which is really one of the most the highest.
Top location.
It's a top earning location, you know, if not in the United States, in the world. The zip codes have the highest money making individuals in the world, and the spaces are in demand and have been protected by landmark
laws and zoning laws for many years. So there's not a lot of development there. So there's a real coup in this property being central, right into the heart of really Greenwich Village on 7th Avenue and 11th and 12th Street.
And now we're going to have more people and less hospitals.
Well, I mean,
well, there's going to be a significant number of people, maybe 2,000 added to our population. That's significant. You know, it's a small area that's very.
Well, what worries me is that there's going to be a lot of investment into luxury housing in Greenwich Village by people who are not really residents and who are not living there full time. You know, maybe somebody from Colorado or somebody from Italy or somebody even from Switzerland, you know, or Dubai will buy an apartment or buy 2 apartments in such a residential luxury community. They're not bringing anything to the community unless they're living there, raising children there, being part of the, you know, Greenwich Village Little League and the soccer organizations and, you know, the baseball organizations in the downtown community. So what worries me as a resident is that these luxury properties are going to be built state of the art, and then they're not going to be utilized as full-time, you know, residences.
It was very interesting to see the process and to see the judge disregarding the other offer, because I was hopeful about that.
I agree.
And also to say that this property didn't have to be sold to the highest bidder. Now, in the other side, she talked about the risk factor, which this company has sort of taken care of. But on balance, I think we should have definitely had the 45 days to explore another option. And of course, I'm always disappointed that we're not going to have not just a hospital, but not an acute care center, because we have already 3 urgent care centers in the village, and we don't need another one. So they're making a whole big deal about that they can't wait to get this urgent care center, but we already have 3. So basically that's.
But there was an article just recently about urgent care and actually putting these type of centers up costs the individual more money for health care. And, you know, if it's a non-union entity, who is regulating what's happening at the facility? And who, in effect, is doing triage and will understand if and where you need to go for trauma? I mean, I have tremendous issues with urgent care. The village has been protected for over 160 years by a trauma care hospital with teams of experienced doctors who have dealt with issues from the World Trade Center, from people who are getting hit by debris and being burned. And having, you know, started that bloodline on that day with 40 other people, because we never work alone in the village with orange juice and bagels and trying to, you know, give people what they need to give blood at that time. There was a lot of people experiencing traumatic breathing issues and that were hit and had contusions, and it was an emergency situation, clearly.
Which could happen again.
Which could happen again, and urgent care will do nothing for the community. It's really a feeder. It's a feeder kind of establishment for basically Beth Israel and now Lenox Hill, since Long Island Jewish is involved, and they want their footprint, by the way. That's what they said in the last meeting at Hudson Guild, which I found to be offensive. We really want a bigger footprint in New York City. It really wasn't about life-saving and care. It was about having a footprint in the city, and for me, it's about feeding dollars up to Lenox Hill. If I'm sick and I live in the village, no one's visiting me on the Upper East Side. It's costing all my relatives and friends so much money to come to the Upper East Side to see me in a hospital, or even cross town for that matter. You know, the West Side from 59th Street to Battery Park needs a Trauma 1 center.
For those who weren't there, what was it like being in that courtroom with all those lawyers arguing the Rudin's case?
Oh, David versus Goliath. David versus Goliath comes to mind. I have never seen so many attorneys and suits in the same room. If you took all the money they spent on their suits and shoes, we could have had another hospital. I mean, I've just never seen so much legal expertise in one room.
Money, my mother used to say, money can buy honey. I think that's what happened. on?
She was only interested in really the creditors, the secured and unsecured creditors. She really wasn't interested in anything, how it related to the community or what's owed to the community or state law for that matter. I mean, I didn't get that feeling. She was only interested in selling it. There was a deal on the table, you know, but there wasn't transparency because there were not offers made from all over the United States. I'm sure that there's a facility somewhere down south who owns hundreds of nursing homes who might have made a bid on this property to put in a nursing home. But I never saw those bids because it wasn't transparently revealed who came forward, nor was that C.B. Richard Ellis proposal or package put out that I saw to anybody. I want the judge sort of to be looked at because I think there wasn't transparency, and I think her decision, you know, was just made to do the quickest deal. It wasn't the highest offer. I understand bankruptcy law allows her to do that because she spouted that and she referenced it, but you know, I wasn't happy. I mean, if there was going to be an offer made, it needed to be more transparent, and there need to be multiple offers. And I find it hard to believe there are people all over the United States who would not come forward and make an offer on the property. And you know, the hurdles would be the same. The zoning would be the same, the hurdles. You know, URLEP would be the same in New York City for anybody. You know, and again, I just want to say, you know, the Rudin family is a respected builder of New York. There are many families that are respected builders of New York, and you have to take that into account. I mean, they'll do what they say they're going to do, but I really think, as a family who's been here, I think it's 4th generation, they should actually put a hospital there with their name on it, and they would be heroes. And nobody would be angry with them, you know?
We are hoping that maybe they can be approached and made to see that this is very crucial. I mean, they know that we feel that way, but maybe now that they got what they want, they can do more for the community.
People will die.
You know,
you will die on the West Side.
They can be heroes, as you say.
They could be heroes.
And contribute something
but people
meaningful.
Right, but people will die on the West Side without a Trauma 1 emergency hospital. You're talking about the West Side Highway. You're talking about children rollerblading and kayakers, and the waterfront still needs to be developed further, and you know, people are living and are moving around on the West Side. To get across town, somebody will die. More people will die. It's just a matter of life and death. We need a hospital. I continue to be very upset about Mount Sinai really being in first position, being turned away by Richard Daines, you know, who's now dead. He's not dead? He died. He's not here anymore. He was the health commissioner, the former health commissioner, and he really put the kibosh on Mount Sinai coming in. And they would have come in and they would have retrofit that hospital. And I've been saying this in multiple interviews for multiple months, and that's the thing that disturbs me the most, that Mount Sinai was in a first position. They should step back. I don't know what they're afraid of. They did a lot of due diligence. A lot of people were interviewed. I know doctors and nurses would come back immediately to the West Village. It was more than a hospital. It was a home. Because it was such a community-based hospital. I don't actually know why Mount Sinai isn't here, because they should have been here, and I don't know, you know, what the offer is. Maybe I don't really know. I don't know. But it's certainly something investigatively that should be looked at, and somebody should go and interview, I think, someone at Mount Sinai and ask them why they're not here, because they did put in a lot of time and energy into the facility. I don't know, maybe it's because for the last couple of weeks living down the street, everything has been taken out of the hospital at night and by truckloads and during the day. And, you know, I don't really know. Maybe their due diligence was in reference to what equipment was there and what they needed to remove or what needed to stay. Now it's a little bit different. There's probably an empty shell there. And I can't explain that to you, but it just seems to me that they were in a first position and they should have been respected for stepping up and being in that first position. And they're a hospital in New York City, a respected hospital in New York City as well. And the fact that this judge, Cecelia Morris, also sort of squashed the Freedom of Information Act for us as a community, you know, was also unconscionable. There still should be a reason to find out what happened to the hospital, you know, and where like Cayman Island and Zurich, Switzerland money went, because there was other money in that hospital, and where all those deposits went, and you know, and some sort of background into what happened into the finances. there's going to be a rally definitely on April 30th, and I think that the community will show up. I think there will be 1,000 or more people coming out and, you know, protesting this and really demanding a full-service hospital.